even if you are not ready for the day, it cannot always be night.
Sir, flex I do work. 6 of 'em like Mike. He's out of sight. Whoa, they got me pipe. 2 man like Ike. 6 out the spot.
Into the night.
Yeah, I'm shaking the drop. I'm still up on top. I've been at the bottom. The devil my op. Can't pay me to stop. My God at the top. We gon' praise our way out the grave, dog. Living, speaking, praise God. Walking out the graveyard back to life. I serve you. Follow your word. See with new sight.
Into the night.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Aftershow. I have to make sure that this mic is working, so give me a second. We're going to be tackling geochronology tonight. There we go. It's good. So I'm going to review the debate that I had with me and Sal versus PhD Tony. He does have a PhD in geochronology, so this is literally his field of research, it's his job. He's published, and is a peer reviewer of many scientific articles. So him and T-Jump, a famous YouTube social influencing atheist, was his tag partner. So we went back and forth on this. It was really fun. I'm going to show you some clips that I put together of that debate, and then I'll give my commentary on it. If anybody wants to join this chat, jump in the box. You can follow the link that's in the top of the comment section, and I'll let you in. Make sure you stay in the background for too long, and I'm not letting you in. Just let me know in the comment section or the private chat, and then you'll be right in here with me, and then we can talk about the age of the Earth together. If you agree or disagree, doesn't matter. I don't even care who you are or where you came from. If you come to my channel, you're welcome. And also you're welcome to join the stream and feel free to just let it out. There'll be a little, moderation, but I'll try to let you, speak whatever you want, flat earthers and all kinds of people come on here. Okay. So shout out Iger if he's out there. He won't be joining me in a stream until next Wednesday, but let's get started with this. David Hook, you're in the chat, so welcome, brother. We're going to go to the first video now. So if you haven't watched the debate, make sure to go to the playlist, and I have several debates on there that I've done. Multiple channels, multiple people, multiple topics.
Measuring the age of some things that decay isn't an evidence of that's the ultimate age of the Earth. For example, my body is decaying. You can measure it at approximately 33 years old. Does that mean the world is 33 years old? No, because there were things before it.
Even 50,000 years ago, if we use exponential decay curve, there's magnetic energy stored in the magnetic field there. If it decayed, a lot of that energy would release, and basically most of the Earth would have become molten from that energy.
It doesn't matter what any individual says if he doesn't say it in a peer-reviewed journal. It simply doesn't matter. If you want the guys on your side to be taken seriously, you need to get their claims past peer review, and that hasn't happened.
So you got one guy saying that, oh, well, all you have is this one example. And so it's like, if you age my body, I'm 33, well, then there you go. That proves that the whole earth is young. That's not what we're saying. We're saying you look at all of the evidence, all of the known methods for calculating an age of the earth, the techniques in different laboratories all over the world and that have been done and published, they're all consistent with a young earth. And then PhD Tony says, well, even if all of the evidence, suggests that the earth is young, if it doesn't make it doesn't make it past peer review, well, then it simply doesn't matter, and I quoted him verbatim there. So if you can't get into the peer-reviewed literature, it doesn't matter according to him. Well, there's a problem with that if, say, there was like a certain level of bias against creationism, specifically within the scientific community and the political realm, which presides over, the funding of its research, because the literature, the prestigious peer-reviewed journals and the science curriculum for public schools and for universities, it's really all connected. It's like an interconnected chamber, if you will, of all of these different people with the money and the politics involved and the lawyers, and they control what is known as the education system, which is completely screwed up in my opinion right now. But let's continue to the next video so that we can get more in depth on this.
In early sediments, when the sun was 30% weaker than it is now. So the argument is the sun was cooler, there shouldn't have been liquid water on Earth's surface. This is easily explained by greenhouse gas forcing. The atmospheric abundance of carbon dioxide and methane was significantly higher at that point in Earth's history, and thus Earth's surface temperature was higher. The points you're raising have been resolved in literature. And, to present them as though they haven't, to present them as though this has never been considered by the scientific institutions of the world is simply wrong.
He plainly states that there is an established paradigm in the scientific community, which is that evidence for a young Earth, evidence for intelligent design in general, is not valid. That's what they all believe, and so there's an obvious bias there. If you have, which there is today, okay, there's hundreds of creation scientists which take the Bible literally, and most of them are publishing in peer-reviewed journals, but it's not related to the age of the earth or creation or intelligent design. Okay, so just the fact that you can have a creation scientist publishing, in the non-related, non-origins fields of research, getting results that are respected, they have a stacked resume that's outstanding, and yeah, they'll publish in peer-reviewed journals and it'll get past peer review unless it's relating to, their biblical beliefs, unless it's validating a young earth. Then it won't make it past peer review. It won't even make it to the process where the peers actually review it, okay? It won't even get that far most of the time. And when it does get that far, it's rejected in every case. Is that because we're wrong? Or is that because there's a heavy bias within the scientific community, such as a worldview that says God doesn't exist, I don't want to be under his laws, so let's make that available for everybody else as well. So, anyways, let me address this question here that I have in the comment section. John C. Can the earth hypothetically be old and young at the same time, yet actually young? Like, say, the formation of artificial diamonds, as opposed to ones formed over many hundreds of years within the earth. Formation of artificial diamonds as opposed to ones formed over many hundreds of years than the Earth. Yeah, the natural diamonds would take a long period of time to form under geologic pressures. And then you have artificial diamonds. So that's a good point, because the artificial diamonds, we do what would take millions of years, nature. It would take nature, geologic features, tons of sediment stacking up over millions of years, say, and then slowly squishing all of that. It creates a huge amount of pressure at the bottom. Eventually creates diamonds, or you have asteroid bombardment or whatever. And so we do what nature does over millions of years in a laboratory within just a single human lifespan. Okay, a single scientific experiment, can just demonstrate, a lot of what was on paper before that point. So being able to create diamonds artificially, very small quantities, definitely nowhere close to commercial production, but you can artificially create like small diamonds. So you can also rapidly create a diamond in a global flood, theoretically, with the tectonic plates. Instead of moving at the rate that they do today, very slowly, then over the course of about 1 year in a global flood, you have all of that happening. So not rapid, like relatively speaking, it's rapid relative to the deep time geologic view. But if you have, a year to produce all these features, or at least 6 months, because the mountain ranges would be formed 150 days after the flood, approximately, and when the water stopped. But then they have to go back and forth, and the land has to dry out. So immediately, when the Bible says that the waters began to assuage, that point, that's called the compression event with the hydroplate theory. The point is that the major geologic features that we have, see, I rabbit trailed for so long that I think I lost my train of thought. But we were talking about, so that rapid geologic formation of the mountains can produce enough pressure to create diamonds. So you don't have to have millions of years necessarily, just depending on what model you have. Now, T-Jump and Peach Tony, they're going to argue that despite all the evidence that you may have, like that I may have, all of the evidence for young Earth, if it doesn't make it past peer review, that's the crux of the argument, that it's basically invalid, that it doesn't matter. But, they're not really seeing past their own bias, which is obvious in the literature. When you have respected researchers out there, scientists, PhDs, huge resume, and they're able to publish in the peer-reviewed journals, but every time they try to publish something that is related to a young Earth, it's rejected. Like, wouldn't you think that they have at least enough respect for that person to publish one article? Like, every single one of them basically are rejected. None of it makes it past peer review. So that's an obvious bias, and that they don't really see that or consider it. What do you do at that point? How do you help somebody? It would be more logical to assume that there was a bias, considering that most of the evidence does support young Earth. So if it's more logical, plausible, and probable, shout out LPP, if you will, then if it's more LPP to assume that the Earth is young based on the evidence, then it seems that there would be a bias in the literature to try to keep creationism out, because why else would they have that big of a problem with it, Anyways, next video. I think we're on number 3 here. So I hope I got that question. I don't know how to quite answer it, John C., but I appreciate you being here, and welcome to join this stream if you want. Just follow the link in the top of the comment section if you want to join this open mic after show. If you're just laying down, you got the AC cranked up full blast. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing on TV. Well, I'm here for you. Okay, so you sit. I almost said shit back. I mean, sit back and really relax. And watch these guys go crazy. T-Jump always loses it in these debates. He's always like scratching his head, doing this number, or what is he doing? I don't know. Watch him. You gotta watch that guy.
Christopher's argument of extrapolating population growth over the last 300 years, when we've had a massive improvement in medical technology and a massive reduction in infant mortality, and you extrapolate that backwards, that's sheer nonsense. We obviously didn't have access to modern healthcare or modern food production or modern shelter or heat production. Obviously, mortality rates were higher in the past, so taking modern period population growth and extrapolating it backwards is ill-conceived.
In my opening statement in the debate, I provided evidence for from human population growth. So you take the rate at which the population grows today, since basically the time of Christ, and then you extrapolate that back, into the past, or you take, say, the earliest humans that were evolving from apes in Africa 1 million years, according to their scenario, and you take 1 million years of all these humans breeding on the same continent, or a minimum of 100,000 years, you're going to have a massive inbreeding problem, first of all, because you're isolated to that one area. That's the first problem. And then secondly, if it all works out and that doesn't happen, then there should be many times over the current number of humans on the earth today. It should be like overpopulated, basically, the number of people that would be here if their scenario has taken place and that much time has elapsed, But he is clever to point out that if you just change the rate at which human population growth rates, were happening, then you can account that into the theory, and it would work out. But slower in the past, that's, if it's slower in the past, why is it slower in the past? We're talking about hundreds of thousands of years, and you're isolated to that one continent. You think they're going to come together and try to work something out? Or are they individually living like as tribes or whatever? Like, don't you think eventually problems are going to develop, especially over that long of a period of time? How long can humans even survive that isolated? And that's really not something that's like experimental. You could say that any tribe on the earth today was millions of years old, because they would believe that we all came from Africa. So if we all came from Africa, then we should be a bunch of, inbred mutants, or we should be overpopulated, and neither of those has happened. They say the world is overpopulated, but it's ridiculous. Okay, you can drive across Texas sometime. Plenty of room out there. Drive across Nebraska. It's just crazy. There's a lot of space out there. If it's overcrowded where you are, just move. You take the whole world's population and concentrate it. Could put everybody within the city of Jacksonville, Florida, and they would still have room to square dance, basically. And it's going to be crowded, but not as crowded as an elevator gets. Now, anyways, yeah, you change the human population growth rate, and that would solve, the problem of, us looking at the human population growth rates today. And, you can't do that for millions of years without getting a lot more people than we have on the earth today. So you solve that just by slowing down the growth rate. And, the only method that they can use to do that is going to be isolated to Africa. And to me, that creates a problem. Now, if you could solve that problem, okay. But then you've only solved one of the problems, one of the evidences for a young earth, which contradicts the principle of uniformitarianism, saying that things have always stayed the same, slow, gradual processes over millions of years. Let's go to the next video.
This whole thing about it having to be approved by peer review, I've seen junk papers going on for 40 years, and they're still going on, and it's this club, particularly for origins research in the past. Operational science is good. Origin science in the past is not quite as high quality. So stuff that can be experimented on in the present day and have testable predictions, I'm A-okay with that. But stuff where it's in the deep past, we have to reconstruct it, and there's not any way to actually experiment and prove it directly. It's subject to kind of like, whatever, whatever is accepted.
Yes, everybody started out believing that the Earth was made 6,000 years ago and created by God. But then we started looking at the evidence, and it didn't back that claim up. And so we adjusted our beliefs, right, based on the evidence available to us. That's what science is. We started out 300, 400 years ago with every scientist, believing that the Earth was 6,000 years ago. And we're not there now because that's not what the evidence suggests.
So I had responded to T-Jump's challenge of a novel prediction for creation, which is to basically have a scenario like within your hypothesis of what's going to take place in the future based on your hypothesis, basically telling the future, okay, I'm going to predict certain things going to happen because what I'm saying is true, And so based on the flood model, we make prediction, or the creation flood model, make predictions on that, for the future. And if they come to pass, well, then it's a novel prediction. It's like something new that no one's ever discovered before. And I brought up the fact that all the fields of research today, most of them were established by biblical creationists, which they agree to. He plainly stated there, got a PhD, okay? PhD Tony said that everybody believed the earth was 6,000 years old and that it was flooded until relatively recently, So the paradigm has shifted from evolution to creation. Is that because the evidence is wrong? Like that our evidence for creation and the flood is wrong? Is that what that means? Or, could it mean possibly that the reason that it shifted was because of a bias, because of a group of people that had a certain agenda that they wanted to enforce on everybody because they're just wanting to share their views like us. So here's the story. It starts out with the Scopes monkey trial, okay? You have a trial that's taking place where the Christians, they want to keep creationism in the textbooks, but they don't want just to keep creationism in the textbooks, okay? They already have a religion technically in a public school, so it kind of does conflict with the Constitution somewhat. I don't think really, because I don't know. I don't even think we should have public schools, but the point is that they want creationism in the public schools, and they want to keep evolution out. So they're fighting like a religious battle, and cleverly, the And this has happened in many court cases. Scope's monkey trial is just the first example because that's like the first one. Many have taken place since then in several states. So in most of the cases, they're coming in and they're presenting evidence for evolution as like it's observable science, not like it's a religion. They're not coming in for religious intention. They're coming in just to be able to teach something that's totally non-religious, because it's based on observable science. And so that's the way that they get it into the textbook, and in the process actually remove creationism from the textbooks because creationism doesn't fit that non-religious agenda, which better agrees with the Constitution, like the separation of church and state. If all these different people of different religions are coming to one area of public school, well, then you really shouldn't teach on religion. Like, you shouldn't teach one religion to everybody because that's not how it's supposed to work with, like, government or whatever. I don't know. It's nonsense to me. I don't think public schools should exist. But if they do, what religion are we going to teach? Well, I don't think we should teach either. I think that the creationists, that have fought in these court cases are wasting their time trying to keep creation in or get evolution out. Okay, it's a total waste of time. What they need to do is just agree to not teach on the topic of origins and just focus on stuff that is observable, testable, and demonstrable. That's what they need to do. So the point is that the reason that scientists change their mind on this and that the paradigm has shifted is not because evolution is actually observable science, but because they had were fighting people, that were against the Constitution, basically. The Christians trying to keep evolution out, but also they want to keep their religious views in because they're both religious inherently. I mean, you can't prove God exists. You can't prove that he doesn't exist. So if you're going to have a religion, which one should we teach? There's the controversy there in the public schools. And the only way to win that battle is the way that they did it, because the Christians are fighting a religious battle and they're basically cleverly saying, well, this isn't even religious, it's observable science. And but the overall evidence that we have totally demolishes evolution theory. So you ask, how did they even win these court cases? And the simple answer is that they were not honest, in some areas. Most areas, the Christian is legitimately losing the court case because it's like not constitutional to try to keep your religion in and keep somebody else's house. So they're fighting the wrong battle. They didn't do the right thing at the right time when it was needed the most. And so now the only alternative, is like another religion. And it's not recognized as a religion because, they've had a lot of resources. And I want to be fair to the evolutionists, they have had a lot of resources to promote their evidence. And they do have a lot of evidence. I'm not saying that they don't. But I don't think that evidence is as good as the evidence for creation and the flood. It's a matter of perspective, matter of making a decision, I think that in an honest court of law, if you were just putting the evidence for evolution in the textbooks, if that was put on trial, I think in an honest court of law, the judge would throw out all of that, and the jury would laugh at all of it as well. Okay, I will be the prosecutor. Okay, and then some other guy. Snake was right, for instance. If that'd be a good one, he could be the defendant. He can defend the evidence for evolution theory in the textbooks, and then I can go on the offense, and I'll have the jury rolling. I guarantee you, they'll be laughing at his story, and none of it will make any sense to them because it's too complicated for them to teach somebody that they actually came from a rock long ago and far away, and that rock came from a dot that exploded from nothing. To teach somebody that they share a common heritage with an earthworm or possibly a jellyfish of some sort 3 billion years ago or something. That would take many, many years of, teaching. You'd have to go to school for many years in order to be taught to believe something that dumb. You could not do it on your own. It's just too dumb of an idea to believe you came from a rock. But anyways, now we're on number 5, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here we go.
I am interested only in what he can publish in peer review.
Yes.
I'm
Okay.
not interested in the private opinions or the popular fiction that people disseminate. I am interested in science. I have studied the peer-reviewed literature. If he has something meaningful to say, he can present it in the peer-reviewed literature.
May I ask you? I would presume, sir, you're a peer reviewer.
Yes.
If he publishes in a preprint, would you be willing to read it and critique it? So I'm not.
Yes,
saying
I
that,
would.
So PhD Tony says he's not interested. His mind, and he openly stated this, is totally closed off to ideas about the age of the earth if they're not in scientific literature. But he would be willing to review it. But the question is, what good is that going to do if one guy on the board of review is giving a positive review? It actually probably would put his job in danger, since the scientific market, is promoting the status quo of deep time geology and paleontology, Darwinian evolution or neo-Darwinian evolution, whatever you want to call it, common ancestry. This is the agenda in marketing. It's about competition, obviously supply and demand. People want to know what's the latest science. They want to be updated. So it's a big market out there, and they have control of it. As I said, they've had a lot of resources, lawyers, politics, government funding, and none of it has gone to the advancement of creation science research. It's because there's a market established. It's because there's a mainstream, and a lot of it is, or all of it, in my opinion, is propaganda. But to be fair, they haven't given us the same courtesy, as we'll see in just a second, as we've given them, to state that we have a religious belief. They have not been as honest. They're stating, their belief as something that is observable science. So you don't even have to believe it by faith. There's not an element of faith whatsoever. You can observe all of it, but that's false. They make a false claim there. They want to masquerade their religion as science, but it's just as religious as our position. Now, the only difference between creation and evolution is the fact that one of them is tax supported, okay? And it would die a cold, hard death if it wasn't for the tax dollars that go into the school systems to fund this theory of evolution. They'd have to actually establish private schools with their own money and have people pay to come learn them, which nobody is going to do, not the general population, because they even did a recent survey, where they asked all these Americans in every state how old that they thought that the earth was. Do you believe that, in evolution or creation? Do you believe in the story of Noah's Ark? Questions like that. And they all gave Noah's Ark in the Bible a positive review, or, 63-70% of them. So over half the majority still believes in the literal story of Noah's Ark, if you're just looking at population. So what do you think the scientists believe? Well, how many scientists you think are out there that are not open about creationism because they're in fear of losing their jobs? There's a lot of them out there. You'd be surprised. You can go to a movie called Expelled with Ben Stein. It's a great documentary you can watch on that particular topic of people in, having secular jobs ostracized from their colleagues. And so, anyways, next video.
Well, giant insects, giant fern plants, giant trees, where did those come from? It was a different environment. So you just need to change the atmosphere and you'll be able to produce things like that. It's not science. It's just, or it's not magic. It's science. Even though science looks like magic sometimes, that's why people study it.
Except that there were no trees during that period, right?
The Carboniferous era, there were no trees.
Yeah.
Trees are fossilized trees that run through multiple seams of coal in the earth.
That's an anecdote that people claim. I'd like you to provide me with a reference to where that is demonstrated. This seems people keep on bringing this up because they heard it from some other creationist.
Worldwide. What are you talking about?
No, it hasn't.
Okay.
It should be okay. If it's been demonstrated worldwide, then it should be trivial for you to go Google up an example and show it to you.
Nova Scotia. There you go.
That's
polystrated trees, Nova Scotia. You could just Google polystrated trees, and you get several examples. Okay, and then you maybe type in running through multiple layers of coal, and you will get examples.
I think the pictures really speak 1,000 words there. So he's saying that they don't exist. There you have it. Okay. And then you have the documented ones, which nobody's photographed yet. I guess they haven't taken the time. But there's books, literally books written on this topic. So I'm sure you could find some if you really wanted to go down deep and stay down long on this topic. You could find some books and they'd have even more pictures. I was only to find 2, honestly, in a Google search project, which I only spent like an hour on, maybe. It is. I'll be honest, it is hard to find, but it's not like I didn't find any, right? It's known. You can go to the Kettle coal mines in Tennessee, and that's where they took that one picture, in the Tennessee Kettle coal mines. So you have a tree running down through a seam of coal. Now, given you don't have another layer of coal above it, and then it extending above that, and then another layer of coal, sure, it's just connected to one layer of coal, and it is on the top, but it is running down through that coal. The root of it has been coalified, so it was in that period. You can't say the trees didn't exist in that area. You can't say that the layers are millions of years old either, because of the fact that there's a tree running through all of them. The tree was rapidly buried in a global flood with all of that mud, or it floated around and then slowly sank to the bottom. But some of these trees that run through multiple layers are upside down. So they were catastrophically buried, and then all of that rock hardened over the course of maybe 500 to 1,000 years after the flood. And that's why you see the Grand Canyon, because the sediment was still relatively soft when 2 lakes overfilled their natural dams, breached, and then a massive spillway was created called the Grand Canyon when it wasn't solid rock. So it was formed catastrophically. It was a dam failure. That's the theory. But anyway, these guys would laugh at that, by the way, but they're gonna be the ones. They're laughing now. They'll be crying later if they do not actually serve the God that I serve, which is the God of the Bible. That may sound arrogant, but I didn't say it. The Bible says it, that every knee shall bow, every tongue shall confess that Jesus Christ is Lord of the glory. Jesus Christ is Lord to the glory of the Father. And I said that in this debate to those guys. So they're not getting away. The Bible may chap their hide, but they better get some Vaseline, because that book's going to judge them one day, whether they like it or not. Doesn't matter. But I love them. I respect them. Very smart people, a lot smarter than I am. I demolished them in this debate because I presented facts that cannot be disputed unless your evidence is, oh, well, they didn't accept it in a peer review. It didn't pass peer review. Well, if that's your evidence, okay, that's one way of looking at that. But how about what's logical? Anyways, I think this is the last one here.
Well, giant insects, giant fern plants, giant trees.
Not that one. This one.
You're saying that we, at the beginning of your presentation, that we weren't basically qualified to talk on the subject. This is for fun. And that's true. That we're not qualified as geochronologists like yourself. You may be qualified, but me and Sal may be not. We don't really need to be qualified, though. We just need to go to the experts and see what they say. And there are many creationist geochronologists. So that's not a valid argument to appeal to those who have credentials. When there are those who have credentials that you disagree with. We don't just have isolated examples of the Earth not being millions of years old or being restricted to at least 100,000. Most of the ways that you can calculate an age for the Earth, prove that the Earth is young. Okay, it's not like we only have one or two examples. They all show that the Earth is young.
It's very difficult for you guys to just say, this is a problem. I have shown that I said something is problematic for my theory, and I don't feel that was reciprocated, and I'm sorry, I have to say that I don't regard this lack of skepticism as speaking well. It sounds to me like you're closing your mind to alternative viewpoints.
Sure. I think that was not very productive, but okay.
Okay, so again, I did point out that if you're not an expert, one of the ways you can tell junk science from real science is whether or not it has practical applications. And geochronology does have practical applications. It is used in industry. It is used in mineral exploration. It is used to get us the stuff that goes into our batteries, our cars, our planes. Our economy depends, as it stands, on the accuracy and reliability of geochronological techniques.
And what he's talking about here is natural oil and gas, which you cannot locate unless you have the geologic column with the index fossils and the radiometric dates to tell you, which strata sequences are going to contain the natural gas and oil deposits, and also rare and precious metals and stones. You're going to need to understand where you are in the geological column, where you are in the Earth as far as the upper or lower portions. You're going to be able to, if you're talking about the whole planet, so anywhere there could be oil, and you got to, as far as if you don't understand geology, so you would need what they consider index fossils. So you have a trilobite, for instance, which you will not find in upper strata anywhere, and it's contained in the Cambrian layer. This is very deep. This is where the marine organisms that would today live on the bottom of the ocean floor, and this is an ecosystem which lives on the bottom of an ocean floor, and they are highly complex. But the trilobite is only found in that sequence of strata. It's not found anywhere above. So if you could find a trilobite, then you would know geologically where you are. And also, if you date, you look at the radiometric elements. If you have a high level of uranium, you know that you're in a low layer of strata, because high levels of uranium and lead, are in deep portions of the crust, whereas lower levels and other radioactive elements, which are lighter, because you have the the heavy radioactive elements, which last a lot longer, and they yield billions of years. And then you have the lighter radioactive elements, potassium, argon, rubidium, strontium, for instance, that have a faster decay rate because they're really small. They decay really fast. Basically, the atomic structure, is a lot smaller, it's falling apart easier, to put it in most basic form. And so you have, as a result of having lighter radiometric or radioactive elements at the top, you're going to have ages that are in the millions of years. Okay, so younger ages at the top, and if you look at the heavier radioactive elements at the bottom, they're going to yield older ages. And so if you have high levels of these heavy elements, that you're likely in the low layers of strata. And then if you have an index fossil to back that up, you can tell for sure basically where you are. And so that's what he means by our entire industry, of oil and gas, and it all depends on geochronological techniques, which would be specifically the radiometric dating and the index fossils. And those are actually the two isolated examples of the majority of evidence which contradicts a young Earth, because they do seem to suggest, at face value, that, the animals evolved and that the Earth is old. But all the other evidence supports a young Earth. So is it, when you look at it that way, is it more likely that the majority evidence is wrong and that these two exceptions are right? Or is it more logical to conclude that what the majority of the evidence says is correct, and then you need to adjust your theory based on the majority of the evidence to those isolated examples? They may seem to suggest a old Earth, but maybe there's a way to explain why they're yielding these old ages, or why the fossils appear to have evolved, And since I've covered kind of we won't get into the technical details of radiometric dating and the fossils. You can go to the Cambrian era stream that I did, Aftershow, find out which one that is for you. In the Aftershow episode 18, you go to the playlist and go to Aftershow, and episode 18, the Cambrian period or flood stage, and I kind of give an explanation for the geologic column. You can go to my debate that I did with Snake Was Right, and we debated transitional fossils. So that basically covers the order of the fossils, why they're in that order. And then I also debated Snake Was Right on the Steve McRae channel on the heat problem, how you explain the radioactive elements and why they yield billions of years, and how to basically solve that problem from a creationist perspective. So those are two good debates, and thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, stay in prayer, stay close to your family, and praise God. God bless America. I'm Christopher Silvius, and